Going into this season, the Philadelphia 76ers had championship aspirations after making arguably the biggest free agency signing of the offseason in landing Paul George, signing him to a max contract to the tune of 4 years, $211 million, paying him through the 27-28 season, where he will be 37 years old by that time. Paul George was seen as the piece, the perfect complement alongside Joel Embiid, and a budding star in Tyrese Maxey, coming off as a Most Improved Player of the Year campaign and first-time All-Star selection, also signing him to a max contract extension, by the way, by rounding out the roster with signing key rotational players like Andre Drummond, Caleb Martin, extending Kelly Oubre Jr., Kyle Lowry to a 1-year vet minimum deal. This was the team that felt they had enough to rival that of the Boston Celtics and finally get over that hump in getting out of the Eastern Conference, or really I should say finally getting beyond the second round, because the Sixers as an organization haven't made it to the conference finals since 2001 when they went to the finals with Allen Iverson. A lot of successful regular seasons, a lot of years where they looked to be the title favorites but always came up short in the playoffs. And with the teams like the Knicks, the Cavs, and even the Bucks making moves in the offseason to improve their roster, and with this window to win now with Embiid, while still in his prime, closing sooner than expected, this was the season for the Sixers to make an all-in push. The problem for the Sixers, though, is this team doesn't really fit that well together. And when you compound that with injuries to two of your star players, it leads to where the Sixers find themselves today, sitting on the outside looking in of the play-in. Now, normally this wouldn't be that bad of a thing. Some teams have had title aspirations in the past going into a season, get hit with a mountain of injuries, they lose a bunch of games, but it leads to a high lottery pick as a result, and thus taking a season off, getting your star players healthy, landing another young talent in the lottery isn't the worst thing. Take a look at a team like the Grizzlies, who went through this last season and are now sitting near the top of the Western Conference. But for the Sixers, it's a little bit different because, one, their star players in Embiid and Paul George are both on the wrong side of 30. It's not like they can easily afford just throwing away a season, but more importantly, the Sixers are in a very tricky place right now where they could be sending one of the best teams in the NBA a lottery pick. How, you might ask? Well, let's talk about it. As always, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, I know this is a basketball channel, and basketball is always my go-to sport of choice to watch and play, but I do love the NFL playoffs, and we've got 8 teams battling it out to make it to the conference championships, and what better way to get in on the action right now with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. They are offering all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after you bet just $5. Don't miss out on this great deal. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using promo code AND1HOOPS. The crown is yours. You can use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. You can bet live on in-progress games, and guess what? If sports betting isn't available where you live, don't worry, you can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code AND1HOOPS and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code AND1HOOPS only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, over the course of the past few seasons, the Sixers have made various trades and sign-in trades to get the proper help and talent to build around Joel Embiid. And while some of the trades haven't been great, like selling off some of their future draft capital for James Harden and flipping him for less than that a season and a half later, or trading for Jimmy Butler, all but to have him walk in free agency a few months later, but one of the worst trades they've executed in recent years was when they traded a washed Al Horford to Oklahoma City Thunder just to get off his contract in exchange for Danny Green, but sending the Thunder a future first-round pick as compensation for taking on Horford's contract, that future first-round pick being the Sixers' own 2025 pick. Now, the pick is protected, but only if it falls inside of the top 6. Anything 7 through 30, it's going to the Thunder. Now, at the time, this wasn't really seen to be that big of a deal because the Sixers were going to be competing for the foreseeable future, having one of the best players in the league in Embiid, so the pick would likely convey into a late first-rounder. But as it stands right now, at the time of this recording, the Sixers have a 75% chance that that pick goes to the Thunder, a pick that, if the season were to end today, would be the number 8 overall selection in a stacked 2025 draft, going to the best team in the league in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Kind of insane to think about, really, when you look at a team like the Thunder that is so good, so stacked and deep, sitting at the top of the Western Conference, but also without one of their star young players in Chet Holmgren. They have a mountain of picks coming their way over the course of the next 7 years that they've acquired over numerous trades, and they could also be getting another lottery pick this season by way of the Sixers, a pick that I'm sure most expected would be a late first round pick going into the season. But for the Sixers, here is the biggest dilemma they face right now. Because while yes, in theory, they could still try and make a push for the playoffs this season, they could try and get Paul George and Joel Embiid healthy again going into the All-Star break and kick things off in a high gear post-All-Star break and firing on all cylinders when it matters most. The fact of the matter is, though, the Sixers are already in too deep and far behind in the standings to really work their way out of the play-in territory. And that's even if they can get into the play-in territory. But assuming they can make the play-in tournament, they're likely going to be a 9 or 10 seed, which would mean playing 2 winner-go-home play-in games, which means the best seeding they could possibly get going into the playoffs would be the 8 seed, not having home court advantage against the hottest team in the league in the Cleveland Cavaliers at the time of this recording anyway, or if they somehow work their way up to the 7th seed, then they're facing the Boston Celtics in the first round. Either way, it's a first-round exit for them. Or, because they're so far back in the standings, do they shut everything down? Have Embiid sit out for the rest of the season to try and get him healthy, as he's been in and out of the lineup all year. Sit Paul George, who has been also going through the same thing. Their gem of a draft pick and rookie, who's likely going to be out for the season. Have him rest and not rush him back into the lineup. Try and lose as many games as possible to ensure that they keep their pick and have it fall into the top 6. I know to some Sixers fans it sounds unthinkable to do this knowing the expectations of the team going into the season, but you get to a point where you say, yeah, this season isn't it. And we might as well cut our losses and try to take away something good from this season and keep our pick in 2025. Hell, even have a chance at landing a generational talent, which we know this draft class is expected to have multiple franchise-level players coming out of it with the likes of Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, and Dylan Harper. The thing is, there's a few problems, even if the Sixers do in fact decide to go that route. Well, one, like I mentioned, you're effectively wasting a year of Embiid and George in their 30s and narrowing that window to win a championship. And I guess 2, how can you be sure that even if you were to rest them for the remainder of the season, how do you know they're actually going to be able to stay healthy for the following year? But 3, the Sixers, in order to guarantee that they could keep their pick for this upcoming draft, they would have to finish in the bottom 2 of the standings in the NBA. Since the draft lottery is structured as such where teams, wherever they land 1 through 14 in the bottom of the standings, they can move up into the top 4, which means a max of 4 teams can jump you in the lottery to go into the top 4. Thus, for the Sixers, they would either need to finish with the worst or second worst record in the league in order to have a 100% chance of keeping that pick, which, given the current standings, there is no way that's going to happen. Because even if the Sixers go on a massive losing streak, teams like the Wizards, Raptors, and Jazz aren't suddenly going to be stringing together a bunch of wins to pass the Sixers. Like, no, those teams are tanking too. They're wanting their best chance to land Cooper Flagg to accelerate their rebuild. However, even if the Sixers can't guarantee to keep their pick, there is a world where they can improve their odds from where they are currently of only having a 25% chance of keeping their pick, and that's by falling into the bottom 6 in the standings, because even if they don't move up into the top 4, with the 6th worst record in the league, as long as no other team behind them in the 7 through 14 pre-draft spots jump them, then they will keep their pick. However, even that is still a tall order, as it would mean 2 of the following teams like the Blazers, Nets, Hornets, or Pelicans would need to pass them in the standings in order for them to get there. No easy feat, when aside from maybe the Pelicans, all of those teams I mentioned are also in the tank for flag sweepstakes. But look, at the end of the day, I think the biggest question is, regardless of the direction of the Sixers and where they take themselves for the remainder of the season and trying to still push for the playoffs or losing out to try and keep their pick, does any of this really even matter for them in the long run? Does it make sense to keep this group together, or has trusting the process with Joel Embiid and trying to win a title with him run its course? Because if that is in fact the case, it would make more sense to sell off all of their assets, like cashing in on a trade for Embiid, for Paul George, as well as some of their older veterans like Oubre, Drummond, etc., starting over, starting fresh, putting yourself in the best position possible to tank for the remainder of the season, but also going down a rebuild to build around a young core for the long-term future, building around Tyrese Maxey, and trying to dig yourself out of this hole that you've currently found yourself in. That's really the biggest question the Sixers need to be solving for. Not so much how they want to finish out the rest of the season, but whether the roster they have in place has hit its ceiling under Joel Embiid, and finally picking a lane, a new direction for the future. I would love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.